Hello, everybody. It is Thursday in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. My name is Adam Bittner, assistant sports editor for multimedia at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, joined for our weekly chat with Jason Mackey, our Post-Gazette sports columnist. Jason, we're going to get into the Steelers. The fallout of the George Pickens trade on Wednesday continues. What does it mean for the team in 2025? Are they looking more toward 2026 than they are toward 2025? We're going to talk through that a little bit. We're going to talk through what it means for TJ Watt, what it means for Aaron Rodgers, the deal and kind of the outlook for the Steelers. We're also going to get into the Penguins and their continued coaching search, as well as Penn State hitting on a few big names in the transfer portal. Jason, how are you today?
I'm doing great, man. I give you credit for battling through. The voice it's wavering a little bit, but you got it. You sound good.
I sound okay at best,
Okay.
but I appreciate the sentiment. Before we get into all of that, Jason, let's thank our sponsor for this episode of the podcast. It's Edgar Snyder and Associates. Law firms come and go, but what law firm has been here in Western PA fighting for injury victims for more than 40 years? It's Edgar Snyder and Associates. What firm has a staff of over 130 people who live and work here? It's Edgar Snyder and Associates. Law firms come and go, but Edgar Snyder and Associates is a name you can always trust. So remember, there's never a fee unless they get money for you. If you've been hurt in an accident, call them at 1-800-94-EDGAR or visit www.edgarsnyder.com. They're available 24/7. All right, Jason, let's get into the topic right at the top here. Do you feel like the Steelers are punting on 2025, or at least are they sending a clear message that 2026 and beyond is more important to them? Because when I read the decisions with Najee Harris going back, almost a year now to when they declined the fifth-year option, letting Russell Wilson and Justin Fields go in free agency despite suggestions that at least one of them was going to return, and then finally trading George Pickens on Wednesday, I think a lot of people have been confused. What's the logic behind the moves? The thing the line I can tie between all of those moves is they're looking toward 2026. All of those guys leaving gave them resources for 2026, possibly going to get a quarterback in this class that people are excited about between Arch Manning, Drew Allar, Nico, Iamaleava, some other names. That's the through line I can tie through all of it. And that's not to say I think they're going to tank and they're going to try to win like 0 games. But I wonder if it's more of like a 2019 situation after Ben got hurt where they were going to do their best with what they have, but they weren't going to sell out to go out and get another quarterback because they intended to be better the year following.
I think we might be giving them too much credit. That's where I'm at with it. I think this might be a lot smaller than we're thinking in scope. I don't know if there is a through line to all of these things. I understand what you're saying, and that's the nature of our business to try to find those. But I look at what they're doing, and if you're telling me they're punting on 2025, signing a 41-year-old quarterback isn't how you punt on that. I think they legitimately believe that they can win in 2025, Adam. And I think they might believe that they're a better team without George Pickens because he's a pain in the butt. I understand where they're coming from on that. I don't think that's an altogether bad take. As I wrote, I don't necessarily understand the timing and why this all happened. I don't understand the succession plan because you don't sign DK Metcalf if you're tanking. You don't have the players that they do address the way that they spend money if you're tanking. So there has to be a second move here. There has to be something that they're sort of planning that they can expect. I don't know what that might be, but that's why I think you let Pickens go. You get a third-round pick next year. I think 2026 is already targeted for being an important draft. I mean, this is certainly an opportunity for them to make a splash and get their quarterback of the future. But I just can't go there on punting in 2025. I'm not saying they're going to be an elite team. I'm not saying they have enough to make a Super Bowl run or anything crazy, but I don't think they're punting either.
Yeah, there's got to be some German word for what I'm trying to express here. I think they still want to win as many games as possible. I don't think that they're trying to tank, but I also don't think they super care what happens this season. You mentioned DK Metcalf. I think that's why you give him a 5-year deal, right? It is that you can punt on 2025 with him in the fold and still have 4 good years.
But if you don't really care, why are you sitting there waiting for Aaron Rodgers?
Because, right. And here's my theory, and I had Aaron Rodgers written down as something we wanted to get to. Does he put the veneer of competitiveness on this team, and is that what they're looking for? Because we know they're never going to have the pride to come out and say, we're not going to try to win this year. We're just waiting it out. I mean, that's not how the Steelers operate. And is it just a matter of maybe they're lying to themselves too and saying, well, we're going to bring in Aaron Rodgers and we're going to give him 1 year and maybe we're going to be really competitive with him. And maybe we're not. Maybe he's cooked. Maybe he stinks. Maybe we're going to stink. And that's also okay. I think that's my theory of the case is that they're going to sign him. And if it works out great, then great. And if it doesn't, then they're going to point people toward the 12 picks they have in the 2026 draft and say, we're going for it now, and we're going to go get our quarterback. These Band-Aids the last couple of years haven't worked out.
If that's what they think, they must think the world is stupid. They must have pirate syndrome. I mean, that's how the Pirates act. They think that everybody can't see what they're doing and that just the rest of the world is dumb. The rest of the world is not dumb. I mean, Steelers fans would see Aaron Rodgers. It's not like they'd see Aaron Rodgers in the fold and be, yep, Super Bowl run. We're all good. Like, no. What you explained is a logical explanation. There might be something in there. Aaron Rodgers might still be able to play. It's hardly a sure thing. It's hardly, I can't imagine somebody that would buy that as like the quote unquote veneer. Like there has to be an upshot to that, right? There has to be somebody out there, at least the Steelers think that's going to buy or take this bait. And I'm not. I just don't think. Like, look, I'm fine with what they're doing with Aaron Rodgers. I think it might be the best possible scenario to get the ball to DK Metcalf. You get another receiver. You're kind of rolling the dice. They might have something coherent there. But there's also this part of me that just says, why? Why are you spending $10 million? Like, honestly, like Mason Rudolph might accomplish the same thing or play Will Howard or whatever. Like, you either want to randomly find something out that you're really, really good that maybe you didn't expect, or you want to stink and sink to the bottom. Both outcomes are good.
See, I just don't think – I think they have too much pride to try to sink to the bottom. And
I know, that's silly. That's silly.
But I think that they've somewhat creatively given themselves the out of, they can take some kind of chance this season ahead, and they'll still have those 12 draft picks to go who get probably whoever they want, maybe other than Arch Manning. I don't know that they have the ammo to go for Arch Manning if he has a great season at Texas and is going to go 1-1 and is going to be, that guy in this upcoming draft, as many people are projecting him to be. Unless you're giving up firsts, years down the road, maybe they will. But they should at least be able to get one of these other guys, don't you think, Jason? I think that's they've kind of set themselves up to not tank for a quarterback, to give it a shot. If it doesn't work, then they'll have a better draft pick. If it does work, they still have the ammunition to go after one of these guys. So would it, in that sense, would it be okay with you if they are punting? Because to me,
oh my gosh, yes.
People have been screaming for this. Take your medicine for a year and let that be okay. This to me looks like that on some level, even if it's not like a full tank job.
Oh my gosh, I would be 100% fine with tank, get your guy, reset, all of that. And I think most of the fan base would take one step back to take a whole bunch forward. I mean, that's what they've needed. That's what they've lacked. Post-Ben, these stupid, frankly, quarterback succession plans that just haven't worked. And they're not going to work. And yeah, I mean, we can sit here and cling to Mason Rudolph or Aaron Rodgers coming in here for a year, or maybe Will Howard pans out. But their hope. That's their hope. And they screwed up the Kenny Pickett thing. And, I understand that might give some people some PTSD and say you don't want to do that again, but you can't just stop. You can't just say, oh, well, we can't try to get a quarterback in the first round because we misevaluated quarterbacks. Like, no, you've got to go back to it and try to figure it out. And they have a great opportunity to do it in 2026. So, I mean, yeah, I've maintained this for a long time, and it's certainly true this year, that if this year ended up being 5-12, 4-13 would be even better, and a top 5 pick, sign me up. I'm good.
I feel like a lot of people like to say it in the abstract, though, Jason. I'm not saying you don't, but I think there are going to be a lot of fans that when they're in the throes of losing every Sunday, it's one thing to say that you want them to tank. It's another to see people, actually go through the losses. And, I think there'll still be lots of screaming about the coaching and the coordinators and all of that. But
the Steelers, there's going to be screaming no matter what.
Exactly.
It's all right.
Jason, I think the logical next question is what you now do with TJ Watt, because we went into the offseason and said the two guys they might trade, the two guys that would make some level of sense to trade would be George Pickens and TJ Watt. They've gotten rid of George Pickens, the younger player. came with his own, set of headaches that TJ Watt certainly does not come with.
Yeah.
But TJ Watt comes with his own downsides, chiefly his age. He's going to be 31, I think, when the season starts.
Yep.
He wants $40 million or more, like Myles Garrett is being paid in Cleveland. Is this a situation where if you're really not putting all the chips in on 2025, that you would consider moving TJ Watt and letting another team pay his next contract, getting whatever draft compensation you can, and really, working toward an eye of having your depth, bolstered in even more significant way in 2026 and maybe even 2027?
I would have traded TJ Watt before the Pickens move, and I have no problem saying that. I don't think they're going to do that. I don't think there's a snowball's chance in hell of it ever happening, but I would trade it and I would not feel bad about it. I don't think that gamble is worth the money. It's nothing against TJ Watt. He's probably going to go somewhere else and have a really good season or two. I'm not paying a defensive player $40 million. I don't think their roster is at a place where that's even beneficial. And that's not saying TJ Watt's not an elite talent. He is. I just want to spend my money differently. I think they're underspent and under-talented on offense. That's even more of a case now with George Pickens being out of here. I mean, I hope that they can find a premier, legitimate, at least as good as the average NFL back, hopefully better guy among Jalen Warren, Kenneth Gainwell, and Caleb Johnson. But I would like to see them shift some of those dollars over to the offensive side. I don't think you're getting return on investment. And I think the picks that you can get, the haul you could get, outweighs what you're going to get on the field. And if you bake into that stew, paying $40 million for it. So anyway, the Pickens thing doesn't change my mind on it. I also think for the reasons that you saw the Steelers trade Pickens, they're not going to trade Watt. I think that the Pickens thing had a lot to do with this guy's a pain in the butt. They got tired of dealing with him. They know they're not going to extend him. They don't think it's a good idea. We can agree or disagree, but I think some character played a factor. Obviously, you don't deal with that with TJ Watt. And I think they want TJ Watt there. I understand why they want TJ Watt there. They've come out and said that they want TJ Watt there. And I think this gets done. I don't agree with it.
Yeah, I think that's kind of where I am with it, especially in the context of, like we said, this does not feel like a push to get TJ Watt a ring. And if it was, I think it'd be a different conversation. And
I feel like it's a push to get TJ Watt a playoff win. You thought about that's kind of what they're orienting things toward. If it's a push to get TJ Watt a playoff ring, you should probably back up or have done that a couple of years ago, get your franchise quarterback, reload, and do it in a logical way. They're just like, we got to get a win. We got to get playoff win. 9-8, 10-7. We're going to get a win. There's no thought beyond like the divisional round, but it seems like they're trying to win a playoff game, one of them.
But does that change? Like, I'm so sick of that, Jason, of like, they got to get a playoff win, and then that will validate everybody involved. To me, that's not one playoff win should never be your goal. Your goal should either be to win the whole thing or figure out how you can win the whole thing. And maybe it's because, the media, and I guess we're part of that. It's become the talking point. Oh, didn't get a playoff win. How different would we be talking about this team last year if they did beat Baltimore in that first round and then lost? Would it be significantly different? And should that govern the moves that they're making?
I mean, no, it wouldn't be a lot different. It would be a little different. Like, you wouldn't have the running roughshod over the Steelers defense. We have to fix physicality, the running game and defensive line storyline, or at least it wouldn't be as prominent. But I wouldn't look at this team and say like, oh, they're a step away. I don't think we ever looked at this team and thought they're a step away, because they're not. They're multiple steps. But I mean, do you disagree with that sort of summation of what they're doing? Like, it seems like they're trying to get back into the playoffs to win a playoff game and end that stigma. And I mean, I agree with you that that's stupid. I keep using the word stupid. I don't know why. Adam Crowley planted that in my head in the Fan Morning Show because I called his Paul Skeens theory stupid. But they should be shooting for more. They can shoot for more. And professional sports teams, the ones that ultimately have success for the longest periods of time, have a plan like that. Like we've seen it in Pittsburgh. You reload, you get a whole bunch of assets, you grow them together, you keep them together, they play together, they win together, and then you win multiple championships. Like, I don't understand why we're not pushing toward that, and we're just addicted to like the idea of winning one playoff game.
See, I think they're 70% doing that, Jason, and they're 30% clinging to this notion of you've got to be competitive every year. You got to try to make the playoffs. That this is just kind of the way the Rooneys do business and want to do business, is that they're never going to overtly tank, but they can be talked into, okay, well, we're not going to put all the chips in. We'll put some chips in. One of them will be Aaron Rodgers and one of them will be TJ Watt. And whether that makes sense to you and I or not, that's how I interpret it. It's 70% of a plan to punt and maybe 30% of a plan to compete. And if the 30% works out, then great. And if it doesn't, then they look for it. So
I think that's fair.
It's a mix. It's kind of a mix. And I think that's why it's confusing for you, me, and a lot of other people. Let's get out of the Steelers segment on this, Jason. There's a possibility, maybe even a probability, they're not going to keep all 12 picks, but it is kind of exciting to think about a 2026 draft with double the number of players that they got this season, isn't it? And hearing them being on the clock or within 20 picks of a pick the whole night while it's in Pittsburgh, I think it's setting up to be quite an interesting next April.
It is. It's going to be awesome. I'm looking forward to it. Just the logistics of the draft. It's going to be fun and miserable all at the same time. We'll both be in the same place. It'll be fun. I don't
know where you and I are going to park, but
I don't plan on parking. I'm going to get dropped off a day before the draft. I'm going to sleep at the Post-Gazette or somewhere else where I can sleep, and I'm going to have my wife pick me up when it's all over. Seriously, man, I don't even think I'm going to try. It's going to be so nuts downtown. We'll just work out of our office. We'll be fine. Sleep at our desk. We'll figure it out. Do you think they're going to make all 12 picks? Because I don't. I think they're going to – if they made 9 of those picks, I would be surprised. I bet they get folded into various ways of moving about the draft, including in the first round moving up.
I think it really depends. I think there's so much to play out in the year ahead in terms of where they're picking, A, and then B, how these quarterbacks start to shake out. I think there's a good chance that if you're in that 10 to 20 range, as they've kind of been, that you're going to get a chance at a very solid quarterback without moving picks. But, I think there's going to be some level of what we saw this season of there's a lot of teams that have quarterbacks and are heavily invested in guys, and maybe there's not the same competition to get, 5-6 quarterbacks in the first round that there is in other seasons. So, and how are those guys going to perform at the college level? Is Drew Allar going to get the monkey off his back at Penn State? Is Nico Iamaleava going to have a good season at UCLA where he's kind of rolled the dice on his future to go to that program and leave Tennessee? There's so many storylines to play out. I would bet that they're going to trade at least one of them. So that's the direction I'll go there. Jason, we're going to get into some Penguins here on the other side. Also going to talk about the Nittany Lions, Drew Allar, a little bit. Before we do, just want to thank another couple of sponsors. UFC Gym is our first. If you're looking for a way to challenge your body or sharpen your mind, step into something more than just a workout. Welcome to the brand new Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu Academy at UFC Gym. Here, it's not just about training. It's about the values of honor, discipline, and respect. Whether you're a total beginner or leveling up your skills, you'll be guided through a structured program led by a third-degree black belt that builds confidence, strength, flexibility, and real technique. Head down to UFC Gym at the Waterfront or Market Square to learn about their exclusive 3-month introductory package today. Thank you to UFC Gym. Also want to send you a message from our friends in Bradenton, Florida.
Embrace the laid-back charm of island life while sinking your toes in the sand and discovering real, authentic Florida in the Bradenton area. Unspoiled beauty and pristine beaches, a vibrant waterfront downtown energized by local arts and culture, fresh Floridian cuisine with a flourish of rich history, and friendly locals ready to welcome you to this preserved paradise on Florida's Gulf Coast. Plan your visit today at Bradenton Gulf Island.
We are back with the weekly podcast with Jason Mackey, our Post-Gazette sports columnist. We are talking about the Penguins and their future after the end of the season. They've obviously let go of Mike Sullivan. The big news from the past week was the NHL draft lottery was held. The Penguins got rather unlucky. I think it was the worst possible pick they could have.
The worst possible event they could have. What? Sorry, what are we doing here? I'll be honest with you, Adam. I didn't even understand what the heck they were doing and how to determine this lottery, let alone like the botching of the logistics. Anyway, sorry.
Yeah, well, they end up with the 11th pick either way. I think it was the worst pick that they could end up with. So how do you look at this end of the season flourish in hindsight, Jason, where they, won a handful of games, certainly reduced their odds of picking higher in the draft, when they knew they probably weren't going to make the playoffs for a good chunk of that. Do you have any regret if you're the Penguins about winning those games, or do you say, maybe they turned a little bit of a corner mentally? They're going to get a new coach in here, shake things up. Maybe they can be competitive faster than people think, and maybe we're going to look back on the end of the season and say that it was worth whatever draft capital they lost.
They wasted all of our time, Adam. This late season push was a waste of time. No, I mean, I understand that sentiment, and I feel that way to a degree. And then I think about it a little bit further, and here's where I'm at. You can't tell Sidney Crosby to lose. You can't tell Brian Russ to lose, or any of these other guys, Ricard Raquel, who actually had decent years. You can't tell them to lose. And late in the year, I do like what they found with guys like Ville Koivunen and Rutger McGroarty. They were part of the winning down the stretch. So you did find some foundational pieces, if you will. You learned some tidbits of good news. I also think it was important because of trade value, not necessarily with Ryan Graves, who I think is still immovable. It's going to take a whole bunch of assets tacked on. He's probably more of a buyout candidate. Tristan Jarry did play well down the stretch, and he showed. Matt Bensel wrote this story, and I thought it was astute on Matt's part to even recognize this stuff, but he did it playing a different style, something the Penguins, it was honestly sideways of what the Penguins were trying to do. And if I'm an acquiring team, I look at that and say, this guy found his game, basically doing the opposite of what he was being told to do. I know it's not high leverage, but I'll give you something. And so anyway, I think that can help them unload Tristan Jarry. I think their late season push can help them maybe unload Erik Karlsson. They should certainly hope so. So I understand the draft, the position isn't great. It stinks, but I don't know. I don't know if I feel like there's a strong difference between 7, 8, 11. It's just kind of inconvenient. I hated the draft lottery, the whole format of it more than anything. I thought it was incredibly tough to follow for casual fans. That sideways of the Penguins. I just don't think all that much changed with it.
Well, I think the NHL probably of all the drafts, it feels like beyond the top 5 picks, there is always kind of a dart throw component. And so I agree with you, Jason. I don't know what the difference is between the 6th pick and the 11th pick, unless it's a super loaded draft, but I certainly haven't seen that. Jason, let's talk about the coaching situation. Any names on the coaching front that have stood out to you with a week or so to digest the Mike Sullivan news? I know the Denver coach re-signed to stay there in college. He was a name that was on some people's radars. Do you have a reaction to that or any of these other names?
Yeah, David Carl was atop my list, man. That's kind of a bummer. I understand why he's staying there. That's a good situation for him. Guess unfinished business. I don't know if David Carl was Kyle Dubas' top pick, but I certainly would think he's on the short list. If I pivot, here's where I'm at with it, Adam. I don't want an NHL retread. And no offense to David Quinn or Rick Tocchet. I think they're fantastic hockey coaches. And I certainly wouldn't go down the road of a Joel Quenneville or Peter Laviolette. I want somebody who has worked for this moment, who has been close to development recently, and has experienced some of the success that you've seen other teams, i.e. the Capitals and Spencer Carberry. I want to be mimicking that. And I don't think there's any better place you can go to than a guy named Mitch Love, which people in Pittsburgh might not know him. You might know him from his playing career. He was like an extreme fighter, not like a UFC fighter, but was a real tough guy. And right now he's the assistant coach in Washington. He's come up through their system, coached in the Western Hockey League, I believe. But he's experienced in a lot of different aspects of the game. He knows development. He's seen it done right. He also understands physicality, and I think the Penguins need to get a little tougher. Not that he's going to turn the Penguins into a bunch of goons, but they could be a harder team to play against. So that's the name that probably shoots to the top for me. If you're going to tell me that David Carl is off the list, Manny Malhotra is another one that intrigues me. He was in Vancouver's system. He was Jim Rutherford's coach in their, I think it's the AHL, still over on the West Coast, but their top minor league affiliate. He's one. I don't know. Jay Pandolfo is another one that could maybe fit in here. Pat Firstweiler, I might be mispronouncing that, but the Western Michigan coach, another high-level college coach. So it's going to take a while, and there's some intriguing names. But my sticking points are no real NHL retreads unless it's got maybe an assistant coach and somebody who's been close to development in the very recent past.
I always make the joke that there's guys in the NHL who coach like several teams at the same time. Like Peter Laviolette has coached, I think, half the teams at any one time. He's like 1/3 of the coaches himself.
Did they recycle coaches the worst in the NHL?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I think you're probably right.
You can make that joke about probably half a dozen guys. I think John Tortorella's on that list. I think he coaches 5 or 6 teams in the NHL right now. So I'm totally with you on the no retreads situation, Jason. Let's get into Penn State a little bit. They've somewhat quietly nailed some big names in the transfer portal. I don't think people are yet used to, late April, early May being a significant time in the college football calendar because of the way the transfer portal is shaken out. But they get Trebor Pena from Syracuse. He caught 84 balls for 941 yards and 9 touchdowns last season. Also got Amare Campbell, the linebacker from North Carolina. Those were their big weak spots going into the offseason. I think they had maybe the top level of linebacker play to compete, but they certainly didn't have the depth. So they add to that position in a pretty big way. And we've talked about the receivers a lot, Jason, and their inability to contribute at all in that Orange Bowl loss. Going back to the Peach Bowl, they didn't catch a ball in the first half when that game was out of reach. They've barely contributed against the Ohio States, Michigans of the world. Did show up against Oregon for whatever reason in the Big Ten title game, but that's really about all that room has to hang their hats on in the last couple of seasons. Do you look at Trebor Pena as a guy who, listen, I don't think he's going to be like a KJ Hamler or some of these big name receivers Penn State has produced in the Franklin era, that he's going to be like a bona fide first round, second round type draft pick. But I do think he's going to have the ability to catch a pass in the Orange Bowl if they get back to a college football semifinal.
Your bar is awfully low, my friend. Catch a pass in a bowl game. I do think Trebor Pena is going to be actually impactful. I think some of what they did in the transfer portal to address wide receiver is going to work. They also don't need a ton of it. Like if you think about Nicholas Singleton and Katron Allen and what this offense should be, I mean, I like what it's become. This is not going to be an aerial assault. They're not going to be lining up 4 and 5 wide. This is a run-based offense. They've got a pretty good tight end. They have a quarterback who needs to learn how to, well, he's done this before. I guess it's just recency bias in the pick that he threw against Notre Dame. I was going to say, limit the poor or needs to think first kind of throws. But honestly, Drew Allar's been pretty good with turning the ball over. Probably needs to play bigger in big games. But I mean, if you're surrounding him with the running game and some competent wide receiver play with what they have defensively already there, some of what they're returning, Dennis Sutton is a tremendous player. I think he's probably on the Abdul Carter plan to break out this year. The offensive line should be very good again. Yeah, man, I don't know how many teams you can put ahead of Penn State right now in a preseason ranking, but it's not many. You can count them on one hand.
Yeah, I want to get into that in a second. I'll just say this about Drew Allar. I think he's going to have that pick hung on him forever. There's no world where even if they go on and win a national championship in 2025, where people aren't going to remember that as a missed opportunity. I still don't blame him a whole lot for that because of the wide receiver play. It was a lazy route. He had guys running lazy routes all night, all season. That was probably their best chance to win the game, because I don't know how much faith you have that you're going to stop Notre Dame in overtime, given the way that second half played out. And so that's why I don't blame him nearly as much as I blame the receivers for being terrible. And I think that they have addressed it in a meaningful way with Devontae Ross and Kyron Hudson as well, joining Trebor Pena. So that'll be interesting to watch play out. Jason, you mentioned the other teams that are in this mix for the national championship next season. I looked it up ahead of time. There's 4 teams with better odds right now. They are Ohio State, who has a lot. I mean, they have the talent to do it, but they do have a lot of questions to answer in terms of reloading that roster. They have Texas, who I think that's probably propped up with what you think Arch Manning may or may not be. Maybe he will be great, but we have not seen that yet in any kind of big sample size. Then you have Georgia and Oregon. If you look at those 4 teams plus Penn State, does Penn State have the fewest questions? Maybe they don't have the most talent. I would say they probably don't have the most talent of those 5 teams, but do they have the fewest questions of how they're going to win games and whether they're going to be in the mix? Because I think they have the highest floor of those 5 teams.
Yeah, I wouldn't disagree with that. And I'd also be a liar if I'm going to sit here and say I can work through every question that Georgia faces or Oregon faces. One of the things I do know about those teams in college football and Penn State in general, it seems a lot of that is very reputation based. It seems like you're putting people there just because you're expecting them to be good. Because if you think about Ohio State, even like let's just distill it down to the offense. Will Howard, gone. Travion Henderson, gone. Quinshon Judkins, gone. Emeka Egbuka, gone. I'm probably missing a few too. They've been hit very hard. Yes, I know they have returning talent, but enough to be automatically a top 4 team in the country. Do people know that, or is that just the safest assumption? And I think people look at Penn State and say, you have a pretty big question at wide receiver. You may have a question at tight end or defensive line / edge rusher because of what you lost, Tyler Warren, Abdul Carter. No, Adam, you follow the program extremely closely and know what they have and probably are confident in their ability to reload. People who don't follow them as closely aren't going to be aware of those sort of things. So that's why I think lists like this time of year are kind of problematic. As far as their floor, I think their floor is pretty darn high. I think their ceiling is pretty darn high. And probably the key to that, them realizing their ceiling, is that wide receiver play. Can this offense become multidimensional? Because to work back to your initial point about Drew Allar, I think that he's going to have to answer for that interception. That's going to hang over him. I think what we're forgetting is how many elite throws he made around that time and late in the year too. Like, it was inconsistent. That throw itself was bad. It was a lot of like feast or famine with Drew Allar, but I fully believe that is in there. If he can bring that out, with strong wide receiver play and a lot of the reloading that we sort of expect, man, I don't see a reason in the world why Penn State cannot be right with those teams. Who was it? Oregon, Georgia, Ohio State, and Texas, the last one. They're right there, man.
Well, and you're going to get a chance to prove it because you're going to have Oregon at home and Ohio State on the road. So if those are your 2 big competitors in the Big Ten, those are the teams. You got to get one of them. And I look at that Oregon game and the way they played in the Big Ten championship game. You put that game at Beaver Stadium, you take away some of the penalties. Penn State probably has a good chance to win that game in Indy. Certainly in Happy Valley, I think it could be a similar situation. Jason, I'll get you out of here on this. I know the U.S. Open Media Day was this week. It's coming up. I'm not a golf guy, so I'm just going to open up the floor to you.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on how Oakmont is looking with a few weeks to go until that event comes to Oakmont and Pittsburgh?
It's looking hard and frustrating and brutal, and it was also awesome. So they had us out there on Tuesday for Oakmont Media Day. The USGA and Oakmont did a fantastic job of hosting us and showing what we were going to be writing about, which I thought was interesting, and I have a column on our website right now about that a little bit and what, the USGA and the US Open and Oakmont and all this stuff. It's like the perfect amalgamation of things to torture golfers, and I played Oakmont. I can personally tell you that it is brutal to try to hack a ball out of 5 inches of rough in all of the bunkers. It was a tremendous experience. My caddy Rich joked with me about, it was my new favorite substance or something in the sand so much, my new favorite place to be, just, a good back and forth. It was such an enjoyable time, but it also was enlightening in how difficult this course was. And so I wrote about that a little bit, talking to various USGA officials, why they're so adamant about the US Open being a truly hard test and why it matters so much at Oakmont. And so check that out on our website. I won't spoil it all here. I'll refer you to that, but it was a lot of fun. Looking forward to the tournament. I don't expect this score to be under par. I expect it to be a very difficult golf course over those 4 days. And it's just funny to me how adamant all of these people are in charge of this tournament about keeping those scores kind of ugly.
Yeah, that'll be interesting to watch play out. I don't have a lot of insight to add. I maybe watched the last 5 holes of any given major, but
come on, Adam, we got to get you over to the golf side.
Nah,
I've been working over it. It's fun. It's fun.
I will say I was down. We should probably give a shout out to these guys as well. The Riverhounds beat NYCFC of MLS on Wednesday night. I was down there at Highmark Stadium. It was an awesome crowd. It was the 96th minute, Jason. I don't know if you caught the ending of that one. They were deep into stoppage time. They get the corner kick. USC's own, Upper St. Clair's Robbie Mertz connects on the corner kick, and the place was electric. So a shout out to the Riverhounds getting it done.
Absolutely. And I will go down there. I don't know if you're going back. I've been meaning to take my boys down there. They have not been. We have not been as a family. So I will join you down there soon enough. We can talk Riverhounds on this thing. I'm all in on the soccer too. Absolutely.
Yeah, a little bit of a slow start for them this season, but maybe this will be a spark. It'll be interesting to watch. Certainly probably more interesting than the Pirates. So keep an eye on that. Let's talk to you all again next week. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you again soon.
Thank you for checking out this content from Post-Gazette Sports. If you watch this video on YouTube, please like the video and subscribe to our channel. For all of the sports coverage the Post-Gazette has to offer, visit post-gazette.com.